In my last video, we talked about the importance of managing your backlash when positioning your mill for accuracy. On this video, I have one more thing to say about backlash, and that's its effect on milling on your Bridgeport or your knee mill. So my name is Mike. I am the old tool and die maker. This is my shop, and I'm glad you could join me for today. There's pluses and minuses to backlash. The pluses is there has to be a little bit of slack in your screw to have room for lubricants to get between the nut and the screw. And the disadvantage of backlash is that it can grab your workpiece and pull it in and cause your workpiece to come out of the vise. And when that happens, you can really garf your workpiece up, or possibly even cause it to be non-conforming or scrap. Your cutter can break and pieces can fly around. You know, nothing good happens. You know, you can knock your mill head out of tram. So there's a couple of causes of having a wreck on a mill, and that's one, you don't have your workpiece securely held. You know, you need a decent vise. It doesn't have to be a Kurt, but it has to be a good quality, at least Chinese vise. Sometimes a vise won't do it. You have to actually put an angle plate on your mill and then C-clamp the workpiece to the angle plate, and the angle plate strap clamp down to the mill table. That usually works pretty good. Basically, the higher you get above your ways, the less control you have over holding your workpiece. Another technique is you can drag your locks, what I call dragging your locks. You can put your locks on slightly, a moderate force on the locks of your table, your X and Y. That can counter the effect of backlash sometimes. Most effective way to control the backlash having an effect is to make sure that you have your backlash managed to the point that if your mill cutter tries to drag your workpiece in, that the screw is opposing that force. And what I'd like to do is go over to the mill and give you a little demonstration. It'll be quick because it's really common sense, and it just requires maybe a little bit of discipline where, you know, you're putting your locks on your table at certain times, and you do it enough to where it becomes almost habit, just like turning the turn signals on in your car when you approach your turn. You know, you have to get to the degree where you're doing this. You know, it's almost like muscle memory when you do it. So we'll go over to the mill and I'll just show you real quickly what I'm talking about. This is the way I do it. I've done it for years. I've had wrecks in the past, and believe me, that experience shows me that this technique really does help mitigating, you know, tragic events on the mill. Just quickly, talking about lead screws, you know, there's basically two types that I'm aware of, and that's conventional lead screw that's basically threads machined into a rod, and they run in a nut, usually a bronze nut, and the other kind is a ball screw. Ball screws are widely used in CNC mills because CNC mills basically really can't afford to let the backlash conditions have an effect over its positioning. And the screws in my mill are conventional. I put these screws and nuts in my mill a few years ago, and they're in really good condition. I checked it here a while back, and I think I have about 10 thousandths of slack backlash in my x-axis and about 7 thousandths in the y-axis, which is pretty good. I mean, when I put those screws in, I replaced those screws, You know, there was places where it was worn in the middle that, you know, had like 60 thousandths of backlash, which is excessive. So, you know, you might wonder why I didn't put ball screws in. Well, they're a lot more expensive. I've never really used ball screws in a knee mill, a manual knee mill. You know, a ball screw, typically a conventional ball screw that I could afford to buy, would have probably about 3 thousandths of slack. Not a whole lot more than my lead screw in there that's in good condition. You know, some people, when they rebuild their mills, they do put ball screws in. You know, that's kind of nice. I guess I just never considered that. But so, like I say, in my y-axis, you know, I've got about 7 thousandths. A ball screw would give me about 3 thousandths. So is that 4,000, that extra 4 thousandths elimination of backlash, is it worth it? You know, I really don't know. The conventional lead screws will get me by. So that's a consideration. In a conventional mill, usually, you know, you're conventionally milling it as far as the direction of your mill cutter in the relationship to your workpiece. In a CNC mill, they do a lot of climb cutting, and they can get by with that because of the ball screws, the minimum amount of backlash. So, you know, those are some of my thoughts on ball screws versus conventional lead screws. I guess everybody has to make their own choice on that. So just a quick thought on what I call dragging the locks on your mill. And basically what that is using your locks to create friction on your table. That can mitigate to some degree, you know, the cause of wrecks. And I do it on occasion. It's really hard on your mill, and I would never ever leave my locks on all the time. You know, you never clamp them down hard, but dragging the locks is just putting a little bit of pressure, you know, on the lock, which puts pressure on the gib, which kind of creates some friction there, mitigate the cause of wrecks due to backlash. But and I have done it on occasion. I do it on occasion, but it's not really recommended. We'll go over to the mill now and we'll take a look. So on a knee mill, on the X and Y, you have two locks. Here's one lock and here's the other lock over here. And so the mill cutter is going clockwise, okay? So when it touches the workpiece, it's going to try to pull the mill table in this direction. When that does that, it's going to try to pull the workpiece into the cutter, and that's when you're going to have a wreck. So when you're approaching your workpiece, what I would do is, so I'm approaching the workpiece in my X direction, I put the lock on and I turn the slack so that I'm pulling the table in this direction towards you, and then I take my cut. Now if I was coming into my workpiece in the Y direction, I would put the X lock on. I would push the table towards the workpiece, and then I would go ahead and take my cut. And then when I change the direction, I have to remember to take the lock off, put the other lock on. Now the only time I do this is when I'm taking a moderate to heavy cut. If I'm just doing a cleanup pass, maybe 10 or 15 thousandths to clean it up, I wouldn't bother with it. But that's pretty much all there is to that. It's very simple, and it doesn't take just milliseconds to do, and it'll save you a lot of time and expense in ruined workpieces and broken cutters. So that's the way I've done it for years. It works for me. It'll work for you. I hope you get something out of that, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So I'm going to wrap it up here for today, and I appreciate you joining me, and thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video. Take it easy. The friction of your table and pull the workpiece, check. Oh, Lord help me.